Hello and welcome to Bite Size Modelling. So today, to start off with, we're going to be talking about what kit to build. And then obviously in what order you actually build it by looking through the instructions. So this is one of those questions I get asked a hell of a lot. So I thought we'd do that in part one of our new series. So really what we're looking at is what build do you choose? Okay, so obviously first of all, subject. So I've just picked out some aircraft because obviously that's my preferred subject. Okay, so we've got some various ones here from Airfix, the sort of starter kits, you know, right the way through to, you know, Tamiya sort of middle range. We've got some Eduard down there and obviously some aftermarket type things down in with these ones and sort of limited runs. So a lot of people say to me, if you're new and coming to the hobby, what should you start with? Should you just start with some old cheap kits? Okay. No, if I'm being honest. The trouble is with the older kits out there that you're going to have some perhaps fit issues, construction problems, things like that. And that can actually take away from the hobby. Now, I'm not saying obviously you don't need to cut your teeth about, you know, sanding and cleaning and filling and all those different things, because obviously you are going to need that. But if you're starting out with a hobby, why make it even harder than it needs to be? What I would recommend is something like Airfix's new range. So what you want to look for is make sure it doesn't say anything called vintage on it, because that means it's the old stuff from the 70s and they're particularly nasty. Tamiya, pretty much 90% of their range is very, very straightforward, goes together lovely. What you do want to watch out for is some manufacturers, such as Eduard, make their own beautiful kits, such as their Spitfire here, but they do a lot of reboxing from other people's. And some of those kits can be a little bit of a handful to go together as well, or not quite what you would be expecting from them. What you want to avoid though, and we've got them down in here, things like Fly, because they tend to have a lot of resin, photo etch parts, and can be a little bit of a handful to go together because of the nature of the kits being limited run. Other kits as well, like Avantique, they do some beautiful kits, but they are purely resin. So again, it's not like your traditional plastic modelling, okay? So you probably want to avoid those until you've cut your teeth in different areas. Now, one thing I don't agree with is skill. You know, on some of these kits, it says skill 5 and skill 3 and things like that. Again, it just depends on how you're going to be putting it together, what your good expectations are from it, so forth and so on. So if you're new to the hobby, perhaps you just want to get the construction down, want to cut your teeth, get used to it, and things like that, okay? And in future videos, as we make our way along with this bite-sized series, we'll be looking at depth in, like cleanup and removal of parts from the sprues, actually gluing, filling, when to fill, when to sort of sand down, when to build up, what types of glues to use as well, right the way forward. So over the next following weeks, we'll get further and further and further into these builds, showing things in detail. But for the moment, it's just what kit to pick. Another question we actually get asked is oh, I'm not going to build that kit yet because it's very expensive and it's a very nice kit like the Tamiya F16 here, so I'm going to build some cheaper ones first and things like that, okay? Again, this will build up beautifully with minimal skills at the end of the day. With various skills which we'll teach over the next few weeks, you will end up with something very, very nice because the kit construction itself is very, very good. The manufacturing is good, the engineering is good, so it should make quite a painless build right the way forward. I've built many of these things. I've never used filler once on them, okay? So that's testimony to the actual kit right the way through. And again, the way it goes together is very straightforward, okay? So although it's a very complex kit, if you follow the instructions right the way through, you'll have no problems with the actual build right the way in there. Painting, weathering, and all those things is completely something totally different, which we'll cover in later videos as we make our way through. So, just having a look down in here, Airfix to start off with, okay? So Airfix kits, as we know, the new ones are very, very nice. They go together very, very easily, and to be honest with you, the details that you actually find in the kit, sorry, helicopter, being buzzed by a Merlin. Anyway, the thing is with Airfix kits, they are very, very nice. The detail can be a little bit chunky, but if you're new to the hobby, that can actually be in your favour. Purely because is that sometimes when you're sanding and gluing and stuff like that, you can actually, you know, actually run over a lot of that surface detail and either obliterate it completely or fade it down so it doesn't really stand out. Testimony really is the Spitfire. It's got beautiful recessed details, riveting, things like that. Unfortunately though, if you're new to modelling or hand painting, things like that, some of those details are going to get lost very, very easily and very quickly because the detail is so fine. So something like Airfix got a little bit more chunky details to it, so from that point of view they should last a lot longer into your paintwork and various things, so forth and so on. Okay, so first of all, when you having a look at your kit, the thing is you want to have a look at is the instructions and familiarise yourself right the way through with your build, okay? You want to take your time and understand the building process right the way through. You also want to grab yourself a pen or a highlighter and mark out on the instructions things to remember as you make your way through. So when I do my reviews, I always show the instructions purely because people get an idea of the construction of how the build actually is. So if you want to have a look at any of my reviews, you'll see me walk you through the instructions so you can see some of the pitfalls, some of the best bits, some of the weak parts of any kit. All right. So as you can see right the way through here, what you want to be looking out for is things like number 5 down in here. So number 5 down in here, it says about having the speed brake open or closed. This will make a difference from the parts you're actually using. So down in here, we got C3 and C4 if we're having it closed because there's no detail on the outside of this engine, okay? If you're doing it with it open though, you're going to be using C1 and C2, and you'll see it's actually got some raised details on the outside of the engine, all right? So that way you've got the details open or shut, and obviously it probably makes a difference. If you're having it closed, it won't all fit in there, things like that, all right? So again, make your decision on what you're going to do quite early. So if you're going to be having it with the speed brake open in this case, perhaps, you know, showing it on the ground with the speed brake open, or if you're doing it in flight, something else like that, and make your decision. So highlight exactly which one you're going to choose, okay? So that way you don't make the mistake of perhaps cutting out the wrong parts, putting them into your model, and then later on you're thinking, I've got the wrong one, okay? It happens to me all the time, okay? So highlight it so you get an idea of exactly what is going on, okay? Other things down in here, it's saying about cut open or file open, some slots underneath if you're using a stand, okay? Depending which way you are doing with it. Other things want to highlight as well, nose weight. Do not forget to put your nose weight in, nothing worse than a tail sitter. This particular kit, nice touch, you get a barrel which you can poke, it's for the right height underneath the tail of it so it doesn't become a tail sitter. But obviously you've got to work out 20 grams worth of weight, slipping it in here. There is a lot of room around that as well, so you could actually fit it all in there, all right? So making your way through with that one. And then generally looking ahead through the build and perhaps just familiarising yourself if we're going to be doing gear up, gear down. There's these parts in green which are showing nicely that are going to have to be removed if you're doing gear doors shut, or we're going to be leaving them on gear open. Again, usually it's pointed out now so the ease of removal at that stage, because obviously if you've got the wings all built up, it's going to be quite difficult to get in there and cut them out or get a file in there. So again, take notice of those. Opening up holes as well, really important. If you're going to be using fuel tanks, stuff like that, do it now. Trust me, trying to do them when the wings are together in the sandwich, even with a torch behind it, sometimes you can't see the thinned plastic to see where the holes are going to be. So make a note as well, you need to open up the holes. Working your way through the actual build then, it's pretty much straightforward of putting your wings on, tail planes on, things like that, the rudder's going on. But here we are in the gear section, okay? Now actually for this particular build, it's pretty much near the end anyway, but sometimes it will call out for the gear going together very early in the build. You need to then have a look through the instructions and perhaps at the parts as well to actually work out if the gear can be fitted later on, or does it have to go in now? If it has to go in now, fair enough, let's get it in there and then obviously paint it up, and then you can mask it all up in place. Personally, I like to put them on at the end of the build because I will only break them off, okay? And sometimes from a paint call out point of view and working with the colors, things like that, it's easier to do them later on, okay? So for this particular one, looking at it, it looks like they can go in afterwards, okay? So you can build up those and then put them off to one side and worry about it once it's been painted, deckled, weathered even, and put all of those in afterwards, all right? So again, same with the nose wheel, it's no problem, it can go in afterwards, okay? And then again, various things down in here like putting these speed brakes on, we said about before, that should just follow through. Next up, canopies. A lot of people like to fit their canopies after the build, during the build, right early stage of the build, depending on how they fit, and also depending if you're having the canopy closed or open. If you're having it open, fit issues aren't really a problem because you won't know because the canopy's open. But certainly with the front windscreen, if test fit it, if it looks like it's going to be fine and no problem, you can fit it later on during the build, just mask up the cockpit area and you'll be good to go. If it's particularly nasty, doesn't fit very well, you might need to get filler in there, so it might be a case of mask up all the clear parts, part, get it all protected, and then fit it in there, and then fillers and things like that, and put them in at a very early stage, just depending on which way you can do it. Okay, pitot tubes, aerials, things like that. Again, I put all those on after it's been painted right the way through, and there's that barrel if you have got your tail done wrong. Okay, but again, that's just a simplified way of just walking through the instructions to decide when you're going to do things. Here's a good one. This is the Tamiya F16. One of Tamiya's best kits to date. I've built many of these and I love it. It is a very nice kit to work on, but it has got a few things that obviously when you're looking through the instructions you can see well ahead of time. First of all, down in here you can see there's 3 different versions of this kit, so depending on what version you're choosing is to remember which parts are down in here. So for instance, you've got the bird shredder on the front, which is the IFF aerials, indicate friend and foe aerials. A and C versions don't have it. But sorry, B and C versions don't have it, has a different part, but obviously if you're using A, it does. Okay, so again, making sure you get the right part on for the right model. Again, over here, A and C, there's a very small aerial here, sorry, hole to be made, because there's a tiny little intake that goes on there. Okay, again, it's a nightmare to find unless you do it, so mark it out as you make your way through. Okay, this particular one talks about the cockpit and the main wheel well because they go in quite early in the actual build. Okay, but this is just general, one of those ones where you need to pay attention to it, and when you're looking through it you're thinking this is all pretty standard all the way through. Okay, here we are at the gear stage, classic example. Okay, so when we're into the gear stage here, the gear goes together as you might expect, no problem, and the gear fits in. Okay, it's got an actuator here that's going to hang out the side, and you're thinking, well, there's a couple of tabs, maybe we could put that in afterwards, so we won't have to worry about that one in. That way we can close up the gear doors for painting purposes and to protect any painted detail we've got in there first. Okay, but when you move over to the next section, it talks about another bar going down in here, this one over here, and this has got little feet hanging off of it. Okay, and they're going to protrude out, which means that your actual gear door will not be able to close. Okay, also there's a lot of detail going on here, so now you're thinking, well, do we have to put it in now? Can we put it in afterwards? So a little bit of test fitting, things going along, yes, it can go in afterwards, so I would elect now to not put it in now. I will paint it and weather it and all the rest of it, but we will fit it with the gear afterwards, because this big center plate goes over the top of this and then wedges this all in. This cannot go in now if you're going to be putting the gear on. So again, what I would do by having a look ahead is not put this piece in now, not put the gear in, nor this plate. So technically all of this, the actual doors can close up to make painting easier later on down the line. Once it's been finished and the painting and weathering's perhaps done, we can come back and we can fit these in afterwards. So this is one of those areas, by having a look through the instructions, I've now got a plan of how we're going to put the kit together. So we're not going to put this in now, we will do it after. So we look on a little bit further and we look at the nose gear and how the nose gear goes in, and actually the nose gear can fit in afterwards. So we're not too worried about that. We'll leave the nose gear all off, obviously, because this is going to be going in before this in. You might knock it off and all the various bits to that one. Okay, this little guy down in here that comes up and in is an integral part, because obviously this can't be fitted in purely because we've actually got the gear going to be going in there as well. Luckily it's actually quite a nice fit, you can put it in afterwards. All right, so again, it's looking ahead thinking, well, look, this is going to be a soft fit, it's going to go in there. What's this seam going to be like? Is it going to be a nice clean seam? Is it going to be a bit gnarly? Is it going to need a little bit of filler? If it's going to need filler, it's going to have to go in now. A little technique you can actually do is this one here, for the one that runs down the back, put that in afterwards. So actually you can chop off this front area and put it in. These are all different techniques you will learn as you make your way through the build, but it will make just this entire area easy. You might decide, I'm just going to mask everything up in a big ball underneath the model, and that way we can carry on. Personally, I am a klutz, I'll knock it off. Okay, as you make your way through. And then it's just a case, it's talking obviously about doors and various things, and then on tail, again, the tail, looking ahead at it, looking at the colour call-outs, the tail's a different colour to the actual body, so it might be worth not putting that on yet, painting that as a separate and then putting it on. Okay, so it's little things like that as you're making your way through the actual build of this and deciding how it goes through. Other little tip as well, we're doing this one with a canopy, comes with 2 canopies. Use one for masking, for painting, and then swap swap it out for the real one you're going to use when you actually put it all together. Nice little tip with that one as well. Okay, and then again it's talking about the weapons, the various things. These are all be painted separately and various stages as well before it actually all goes together. All right, and then obviously it's talking about all of these being fitted down in here just like that. Again, it's that thing of going right the way through the instructions with a highlighter. I highly recommend it, and then you can just mark all the areas you're going to need. But the thing is, what you want to do is know what's going to happen with the entire of the build before you actually even commit to glue. Okay, so that way you know what's going to go through, you know what's expected, so forth and so on. Now, happily, I've built these and there's full build videos up on the site, and you can see exactly how I've gone through the motions of building these things. I've done all the scales and all the different markings of this one, so you can go off and have a look at those ones to see how I tackled the actual build right the way through. But hopefully that gives you an idea of exactly how you work your build. So just think ahead to your painting. How are you actually going to paint this thing? Is it worth painting it all as a whole, or do you want to break it down into subparts? So for instance, you can see on here, or on this one up here, it's got a black tail. It will be far easier to paint that separately off the aircraft, paint it and then put it on, okay? These pylons on the outsides, actually they're a different colour to the main body colour of the dark gunship grey on the top. So being actually like ghost grey, it'd be quite straightforward to paint those separately. So again, you're just looking ahead to work out how things are going to go and how easy it is going to put things together, just to make your build easier as you make your way through. So you haven't got to mask up the entire tail and paint the tail separately, mask off the wings, do them all separately, so forth and so on. It just makes things a lot easier. But plan ahead, look ahead. If you can't really work out how it's going to be, have a look at the parts. Perhaps mock up the parts together, just see how they're going to go and make your way through on the actual build. But a good plan of your build makes a lot of difference, okay, because you just know what's going to happen. You don't want to be in that situation where you've got the two parts and then you're thinking, now how are we going to do this? By looking through the instructions, it will help out. So just spend a little bit of time, familiarize yourself right the way through the instructions, and you'll go with it. Some other things as well, just to talk about briefly, is that obviously limited run kits, like the Fly Wessex. Again, a lot of people say about, you know, it's a tricky kit to go together. If we show you what you get in the box of these things, having built this one again, been one of my favourite builds to actually work on. But as you can probably see in here, let's not stand up, you do get some fantastic amount of resin parts and all the rest of it. So if you're not used to working with resin, and also down in here we've got photo etch, there's another giant photo etch sheet in here somewhere, which, you know, has got all the parts on it. But as you can see, there's a lot going on in here, a lot of various parts to deal with. If you're not used to them, you're probably going to avoid this kit, because it needs those parts to make this kit. So again, find out about resin. You know, watch the tutorials on working with resin, understanding resin, joining resin, various things in there. We will cover those in the next few weeks as we make our way through with all of these builds, okay, right the way in this one. So this is the plan of action for us. What we're going to cover in the next part, in the next bite size, is actually removing parts from the sprue. Best way of doing that. Part cleanup, okay, very important, because there's very different ways to remove parts from the sprue as and when, and what glues to use when you're actually then going to be actually constructing things. So that'll be the next part, okay, for actually construction, glues, when, where and how, and various things. And then we're going to be looking at obviously basic construction, then we're going to be looking at actually using filler, and then actually sanding down filler. So when to use what type of filler, and then how to remove that type of filler. There's various different ways to it. And then when do you sand down and when do you build up? So some people like to sand through things to flatten them out. Other people, if there's a step, they build up on the other side, okay? When and where, right the way through, okay? Then we're going to be looking obviously at clear parts, and we're looking at masking, and then we're going to be looking at obviously at priming, and then into the airbrushing side of things, obviously with painting, weathering, so forth and so on in each one of these segments, all right? So there we go. Hopefully that gives you a start on which kit to sort of pick and what to go for, and obviously planning your build ahead.